Welcome to week 3 of the hips and pelvis. Here we go. So in review, week 1, we went over balanced hip and pelvis anatomy, right? The range of motion versus your range of control. So everybody should be working on that with themselves and their clients. You've got range of motion that can be achieved a lot of times with momentum, and then you've got range of control. So if you slow things down, you'll get a good idea of how much control you have in a position. Today, we're going to go over the mastery of that slow and controlled movement so we can create smooth and explosive movements by slowing things down and basically laying the highway, that neurological highway. Everything we're going to be doing today is going to be working from the ground all the way to standing. We're going to get into foot ankle support and then do some Q&A, and I'm going to make sure everybody's got a Google Drive ready to go, because from here on forward, there's going to be a lot more film for y'all to be doing, so I can test your comprehension. As we tie the foot in, it's our base of support, and then we're going to bring everything, attach it from the top down. Last week, we did the difference in a loaded and a released hip and column. So column, the hip is in that column. A thigh and shin out with the hip back is a loaded position. It's the same thing we're going to see in a squat. We're just going to look for that in that position. So head, chest, everything loads into a loaded column. And then the backside, the released column, can be off the ground. Although a lot of the work we do, that foot still is going to be engaged, because I want you to have that prop. I want you to have that second pivot point. We need more pivot points. If you feel like you're getting a lot of reaction responses, those are positives, but I also want you to have accuracy in that. So adding wall today, that's why I'm set up here. So I'm going to do a ton of the wall work, a couple of wall flows. Starting out, back to the beginning, supine. Yep, what's up?
I can't see anything. It's like the video is blocked or something. There you go. Thank you.
Better?
Yeah, it was paused.
Oh, better? Cool. Supine, back to the basics. So today, hip and pelvis. Okay, we're going to do the supine shin tracer. Who has seen this video with the supine shin tracer? Have any of you found it or done it? The supine stork? No? Cool. Brand new material. This is a huge piece of the puzzle for your ACL client, Jan. When you're taking care of her, this is something that I want you to integrate this week, because this comes down to being able to master that hip. And everything we're going to do on the ground here is going to tie into the wall work that you've already been doing with her. And you're going to see an improvement in that wall work by coming back down to the supine work. You can also use this like in what I call a superset. I'm not sure if that's the correct terminology here, but like if you're doing wall work and instead of another set of wall work, you put her back on the ground and you do supine shin tracers. The supine shin tracer starts in the supine decompression, and we're actually going to trace the heel on the inside of the shin. So 2 straight feet, and then there's a heel that traces up that shin. We're going to trace that heel up to the base of that kneecap, where we're going to hold it, and then we're going to close this knee across. I'm showing you this and sitting right now, but we're going to do it supine, so we relieve all the pressure from the lower back. As always, hit a couple breaths. Big toes together, knees up, rotate the inner thighs, hit that base point. Hands come back.
Oh yeah, we've seen it on your videos, the ones you sent. Yeah.
So I'm going to dive further into it. I thought that I might have introduced it, but it's really a hip movement by
the one you showed
closing
us
that hip
with the shoulders. You move your arms forward, overhead.
This one?
No, the one. Yeah, you grab both hands and then you move overhead and then front like
this one?
Yeah, that one. Yeah.
So this is the supine decompression. This is like position 1. And then to add to this, the stork, right? A stork stands on one leg. You're just doing it laying on your back. So we're just tracing that shin with the feet pointing in, both hips closing. You're just tracing that shin up and down with the inside of that foot. I teach it with the heel touching the shin, but really like the arch of the foot can also fit there. The reason we're touching those points is so you can have accuracy. If I teach it up in the air, a lot of people will lose the hip. It'll start to open. And now they're doing just something that's different, which really the chest should be pointing that way. So if the chest is in the middle, the head is in the middle, I want you to close both hips, point the toes towards the nose, hold that feeling while you trace. And you're going to feel that upper part of the hip, lower part of the back really light up. When you get up to the top, you're going to take the opposite hand, thumb out, palm up if you can. You can also use a yoga block or a ball right here. If you're working with somebody that's stocky, shorter arms, right, they don't have the length to get down here, you give them some sort of an object so they can push, because it's an isometric at this point. We're going to hold, pushing the knee into the hand and pushing the hand back into the knee. That's going to really light up the oblique, it's going to light up the core, and then really isolate this hip. From here, you're extending behind the knee. Henry, this is for you, sir. You've got to master this tracer without this knee getting lazy on you. You'll notice the hip wants to fall open and the foot wants to point out in certain areas when you're coming up. You'll feel the weakness in this inner thigh. So you're holding everything together. You're locking in with this hand. That's going to lock this hip in. And then you're going to extend the foot to the sky. That's going to lengthen the hamstring and decompress the back of the knee. We're going to do circles with the foot one way, circles with the foot the other way. Spread the toes, point the toes down, point the toes up, point the toes around. You're working that ankle in the open chain. We're opening up the foot and the ankle here, but it's really a supine shin tracer. That is what I want you to start to integrate, just the basics. In the foot and the ankle series, that's where I add the foot and the ankle turn. So you're welcome to try it out. You can't really screw it up as long as you have the hip locked in and the hand right here. So you're actively pressing so that hip isolates. And that's when you're going to get that active lengthening of the hamstring into the calf and into the base of the foot. And this is a decompression routine for the knee. You're open chain, you're moving it, boom. When you bring the heel back down, make sure you hit the inside of the knee and trace down. A common error here with this exercise is people leave it up and then they go right back to there. So you miss all of this movement, which is the reset that we're working on when the foot lands and leaves the ground. So when I say reset, this side's going to land, boom, and then it's going to leave. This reset is what we're working on in that shin tracer. But rather than doing it standing, where you got to deal with single leg balance, if you've got a bad knee, you're going to collapse that knee to the inside in that moment. So you're doing it, you're teaching it on their back to promote control and accuracy through that range. Same exercise, standing up, facing the wall, leaning into the wall. Okay, what do? We get a distance where we can't reach the wall. We fall into it, we catch ourselves. The heels are going to come up off the ground. We got a second toe that's straight. We're going to unweight one side, so we're going to shift into the left column. And we're going to trace the foot back and up behind the calf, or the heel to the front, up and down the shin. Same position, same shapes, just a slight difference. Back here becomes all the way back. Up the back of the knee. We've done some of these. Back down. All the way back. Everything's in the column. I'm turning the pelvis towards the side that I'm loading. I'm narrowing up the hands so I can get a cleaner routine with this. Up and down. And then I'm going to switch sides and see if I can keep hands stacked one on top of the other. So everything's super tight towards the midline of the body. Tracing up and down, behind, tracing up and down. So I'm doing both sides. If I want to go back, turn the pelvis, I can do foot and ankle work back there. I can drag this foot through, up, back down, through, up, back down. The lower you get, the more that hip is going to load, but you're also going to be tempted to dump forward in that knee. So when you're cueing this, things are falling forward. You've got to take this hip up and back, get that heel off the ground. So when you're doing the tracer and you load into this hip, it's all into the hip socket and never dumping into the knee. If you got the heel down and you're loading the back, if you got the heel up and the knee falls forward, then everything's going into the knee. So you've got to find that balance point where the foot and the hip interact, up and open, chest towards that side. Ties in the same stuff we did with the standing decompression. You're basically preparing the body with the standing decompression, the split stance decompression, standing, split stance, and then wall work with a tracer. Wall work with a tracer, okay? The same thing can be done on the ground. We're gonna do our rockers, both knees, both shoulders. We're gonna step back. So all the pressure's in this side. If you see that back side's back, turning away, releasing one side, loading the other, and sliding straight back, okay? This is gonna isolate the hip. I'm taking the foot out of the equation. Knee down. Not everybody can do this, so that's why I introduced both the wall work and this, but these are two safer positions than freestanding, no support. As you load forward and back, what do we know about the hip? Is it a hinge or is it a socket? It's a socket.
The socket.
So we're gonna treat it as such. Now we're gonna come around it and really get deeper into that hip and untie. Talk about IT band and sciatic pain. Rather than loading in, let's say if I have symptoms in this side with sciatics, I'm not gonna load it. I'm gonna go away from it to release it, okay? And then I'm gonna drop it even further across, because a lot of people with sciatic pain, they just stay in that column all day, which is why there's compression. So you gotta get them out of it, which means back on the ground, turn the pelvis and the hip away from it, trace that foot straight back, and then see if they can coordinate and control here to there, which means that pressure's on the top of my foot and the knee in this right column, so this hip can load. Further back and down, range of motion doesn't always mean better, but if you slowly do it, you'll feel what it feels like to really get into that deep part of that hip, which is really what loads when we squat and when we release. Squat to hinge flow is just a load. Both sides load, both sides release. Both sides load, both sides release. Jan, I like your use of the slider discs to allow Lucia.
I tried that because the sometimes it doesn't slide very good if you don't use something else between the wall and the clothing.
She's not gonna have. She needs this work right here on her back, so this ankle can open and close, open and close, open and close, and synchronize with the hip. But with her injury, you can guarantee that ankle is tight, right? She's gonna benefit from this kind of work because she doesn't have that control. When she's landing to the ground, she's not able to close that sucker and get here because she's been out here for so long. So when you re-ingrain that work, you're able to isolate that hip with those discs. The only thing I'm going to add is this week, don't do both discs at the same time. Integrate some of this work on one side.
Okay.
So work in the open the hip, close the hip, open the hip, close the hip. Now put something for her to lean into, get a little deeper into the other side, close the hip, open the hip, close the hip, open the hip, and then take that slider away, hip close, you're going to take the pressure back into it. And what's going to happen with this hip? It's going to go open again. So now we're working on loading this position, okay? But we're easing into it for her.
And
She should
also,
be sitting back in that hip.
from the videos I sent you, I couldn't see the difference between the way she puts her knees in and closing the hips. So, for example, when I saw the videos, I thought she was really closing the hips, but your feedback was that she was putting her knees like together inside, not closing the hips. So I don't know how to different like, you know, the difference between
the more you see this, the more you realize people can point them in. See that? That's not necessarily in tune with the column. See how the foot's out of the column? But if I open the hip and close the hip and I keep it in the column by keeping it back, you know that the pelvis turns. This is where the bilateral work. If I do this efficiently, I should leap off the ground and I should leap forward. But for rehab senses, you want to isolate affected ACL, right? I want to get out of it. And then I want to open and close it back there, because that allows that hip to open and close without weight in it. And then I'm going to turn the pelvis into it and see if I can load it and shift weight from column to column, because that's what actually happens when we walk, run, crawl. It never happens with both at the same time, okay? So when it comes to bilateral work, meaning both sides, I'm really trying to get out of it as soon as possible. It's stable. It's good to decompress the spine. But as soon as there's a movement component, I don't want to do a lot of these, because if there's an imbalance in this knee, and that imbalance, right, it could be here. See that subtle change in that kneecap that I'm giving you? That's not necessarily closing the hip as much as it's also a collapse to the inside. So you've got to be able to tell the difference of that. And that's going to come down to watching reps, watching a good foot landing and a good foot leaving. So you can distinguish the difference in those two, because they're subtle. And one creates torque at the knee joint. The other creates a synchronization of the hip and the ankle and the knees along for a ride. So open chain work with her. She's got to be able to do this super slow on her back, and then do it leaning into the wall. And that's going to give her the coordination. All these tissues pull up into the hip. And then when you're doing foot and ankle circles, all those tissues pull down and away from the knee. So you're decompressing that knee and then allowing it to be springy again, versus isolating the movement. But that's why I say I like that you use those discs, because if you didn't have that disc under her foot, and she's not ready for those type of exercises, honestly, because she doesn't have control in that hip or the ankle. So the knee's just going to get grinded on if we're bilaterally stacked. So for her, what I want you to add this week, we got to get her back to the ground. We got to get her to unweight her affected side and load into the other hip. And then we're going to work on loading and alternating, which becomes the crawl, which becomes the walk or the run. And you're looking for coordination. Can you raise, open, chest, everything turns this direction, and then you set it back down and turn it the other way. So you're getting away from the bilateral work and into the unilateral work. I'm looking for my phone. That's why I keep looking to the side. Stay on track here. All right, so 6-point column aligned rockers. That's the basics, right? That's the mastery basics. Being able to put hands, knees, and feet on the ground, keep them in the column, load the hips back and forward, back and forward. If I take away a pivot point, becomes the kneeling squat, right? We did 3-point kneeling hip isos. Okay, so her front side, her affected ACL, she has to get good at this position before she does any standing work. Okay, otherwise you're introducing 100% body weight, and you need to introduce less than 100% body weight. I know she's cleared by her doctor for running, but when we look at her assessment, we know that she's got underlying issues where that tissue is still prone to tear. So getting her on the ground, teaching her to unweight this side to get pressure back, and then taking pressure into the front side, which I'm going to give you the side view here. Taking pressure into the front side. What happens to the hip when I load it? Where does it go?
To the knee.
Goes back.
Back.
Back. Okay.
Goes back, okay? And it goes back, and where does the pressure go? Out in the knee. In relation to the knee, if I take my hip away from it, where does it go? It opens up, right? If you can get this hip to open, then you can get her where, is that a closed hip or an open hip?
Both. Well,
trick question.
You
okay?
open what?
trick question. It's a loaded hip, okay? All my pressure's over here, right? Which tells me that it's open, but this is where, who's heard the terms internal and external rotation? And from an anatomy standpoint.
A lot.
A lot, right? Okay, so the hip can internally rotate inside of the socket, or the pelvis can rotate and internally rotate the hip. So looking at that from that standpoint, you're going to run into trouble when it comes to movement. When it comes to isolating, iso holds, I'm going to close the hips, put the butt on the wall. That's a closed hip. When it comes to shifting weight from column to column, I'm not really going to be talking about open and closing a hip as much as I'm shifting weight and pressure from column to column. And I need that body to be able to receive and load pressure from here to there. Something I've found really helpful as a drill with that, rather than telling them, hey, I want you to shift weight from column to column. You give them a weight and have them walk and take the medicine ball or the kettlebell from hip to hip. Guess what it's going to synchronize? The loaded and the released side. Loaded hip, wherever that weight's going, the column is loading. So that's what you're looking at with her. Can she load a column? Not unless she can release it. So you want to work affected side, left side. We're going to work away from it. We're going to do the tracers on that side. We're going to have her face the wall. And then we're going to see if she can load it with a walk versus doing a ton of V's, because that's a way more dynamic exercise than I think she's ready for. Does that make sense, Jan?
It does. I will be rewatching this video so that I could I can write down the exercises. I will have
think of it
I will
this
have
way.
a session with her on Friday.
If I have someone that
and
tore
JP
their
will
ACL,
have and JP will have a session with her today, so he can start introducing her to that, and I will take it from there.
If you guys schedule me, if you can schedule this call on top of one of her sessions, I can take her through some of it if needed.
If you want at 4, we can do it.
Let's do it. I don't have to be gone at 4 anymore.
So let's keep going, and at 4 I can go 4:15. We can do it.
Cool. I'm here. I'm about it.
All right.
So big review, global review, pivot points. How many pivot points total can I get to?
6.
Anybody else? Think about it. I have not actually, this is a question that I want you really to think about.
Eight? No.
Plus?
8. 9.
Technically you get 9. And if you put your belly down, then what are we counting? Is it 10 or is it
10, yeah.
one solid one? it is going to be safer to add pivot points for anybody that's injured. You want them to have the maximum amount of pivot points because you want them to be able to get out of that injured pattern. That injury occurs because of a repetitive stressor. So you'd want to give them more support. More support doesn't necessarily mean less strength. It just means more accuracy, more control. And then you're going to go, okay, let's think about this joint that is injured. How do we reduce the stress, number one? And then how do we reintroduce strength and control, number two? So you're always trying to decompress the joint first before you insert an input and load the joint. And this reciprocation now happens where things load and release. And that's what you're trying to teach the mind and the body again with these clients. For some of them, explaining it can actually confuse the shit out of them. So don't immediately go to like, hey, here's the global scheme of things. Start to experiment with 2 or 3 exercises that you feel confident and competent in guiding. And then just increase the volume of those. Track, hey, a wall sit in 2 minutes in this position with my butt up the wall, my knees neutral, my thighs will slowly open. That's going to be a great exercise for an ACL client. Why?
Because you're not loading the knee.
And I'm not moving.
Adding movement.
I'm not adding movement yet. So you're building strength in a static shape, right? And they have to get really, really good at that static shape. And if you see this, or whoa, this is really hard, then you know that you're hitting an appropriate area for them. You got to stick with it. You got to stay in that area. You got to stay in that zone. You just got to increase volume. If you start to move out of that shape, that's really beneficial, and try a new exercise. Is that the best use of their time and your time? Not always. Sometimes it can be beneficial because you do want to add some diversity to keep it going, to keep it fresh, to keep people like engaged. But at the same time, if you can teach them the value of getting their butt on the wall and holding it for 2 minutes at a time with an intense isometric where they're actively tightening the body, they're going to get way more out of that, and they're going to be able to bounce around and come right out of that with tissues that have been recruited and fatigued appropriately versus a bunch of ACL work, right? Plyometrics, jumping up and down. There's some benefit to that because the load, every time I land to the ground, that multiplies my body weight. Every time I jump off of something and land, multiplies my body weight. You can put 600 pounds on a squat bar and squat and come up, and you cannot actually replicate the amount of force that happens when the body lands and leaves the ground. The amount of force that it creates far exceeds anything you can put on a weight bar. Facts. So think about this now with her. If you're going to jump off of a step this tall, you're going to multiply her body weight. So if she's able to master this, okay, and you say, okay, I'm gonna put a line down. I want you to jump and land. And you're gonna film that, and you're gonna see, whoa, how'd she do? Because 9 times out of 10, when you slow it down, you're gonna look, and she's gonna dominantly either load one side and land in it, or she's gonna load and fall into one side. And that's what you're looking for with your film study, because you wanna see, where does the spine go? Where do the shoulders go? Do I see this hand out in front on the landing? What does that tell me? Where did I head out? Boom, I landed over there. If that's the affected side, what do I need to do on the wall next time? Maybe I need to pick that foot up, get the head and the chest over here, lean forward, okay? Maybe I need to do front-facing work and drop that backside back. We got to be able to get her out of this side and into this side. So that's where this kind of work, walking with the medicine ball side to side, getting her more oriented to column, because in her walk, she's rather upright. She's strong. She's an athlete. So she's going to have this stability in the trunk. And this movement from side to side is foreign to that body because all of her training has been right here. And then when she plays soccer, right? Basketball,
Soccer, I think.
Basketball.
Soccer, basketball.
Oh, she plays that.
Kind of the same game, right? Just smaller. Basketball is just a smaller court, but it's still the same. I got to be able to move the ball, move away from the ball. So it's a lot of lateral movement, just like soccer's run and laterally move, lots of cuts. So you want to make sure she's confident with, can we get to this cone, set, release behind the cone and go to the other side without pain. And then you're going to film it and you're going to see, hey, in that moment, what happens? Does she collapse to the inside of the foot? Awesome. You know what we're going to look at and film? How can we improve the stability of that joint so she can improve her landing? You're looking for whatever she doesn't have control of. If she's a heel down, driving out of the heel, we've got to get better at that, which means a lot of calf raises and kneeling. Better than doing standing calf raises, even though those are beneficial. I can really isolate something if I get down on the ground and I go in the split stance. So I want to see way more split stance with her as well. Both affected and non-affected side forward. Pelvis turns, getting things open, getting her to turn and unlock, getting her to turn and look, and then hit a calf raise. And on the way down, slowly lower it down and really, really get deep into it. And then do it there. And you're going to find a whole different stimulus. We have to strengthen her calf and synchronize it with her hip for that knee to reduce this wobbly that's created this repetitive stress. All right, back on task.
Yes, my approach would have been not the right one, because my approach would have been try and work on her bow on her affected leg. But she needs to learn to leave her call.
She got to get out of her column. But if you're gonna load that bow, this is the bow, right? There's a shin, a thigh out, a chest out.
Yeah, she needs to learn to leave. Yeah,
You can load that bow, but you need to be doing it here and looking for how can I get her to hold and get into these positions where there's a wobble.
Yeah, and when
you talk about the bow, when you talk about the bow, you talk about your ankle or
yeah.
Time to share the screen.
When I was saying, because if she maybe like she doesn't know how. My question is, if she doesn't know how to leave from her left side because she's like she can't, like me, for example, I can't. I'm pointing to my hips are pointing one way, my chest is pointing the other way, and I need to learn to be to leave from the left column to be in the right column in a way, right? Like in my case, for example. Hello?
No, you're right. You've got to.
Yeah. So for her,
if there's an injury like an ACL, most of the time it is the pressure got in that column and it did not release properly. It got stuck. The rest of the body turned, and the shin and the thigh got locked in together.
Yes,
and now the knee gets torn and shorn. So if you look at the mechanics of that injury, you go, okay, how do I prevent that from happening again? I look at it as the brain wasn't comfortable leaving that column, which means there may be a prior injury on the other column where she's gone, man, that other hamstring that I pulled 6 years ago just never really got right. So that's where your squat to hinge flow, all the way squat down, hands on the ground, and then pick the knee up and back. Boom, find out where she fails, and then stick her butt on the wall in that same zone to regain control in that area with another pivot point, butt on the wall or hands on the wall, and spend time in that zone to build strength, to build stability, and for her confidence. Most athletes get cleared to go back and play, but they do not, in fact, have the ability to do so in their mind. And there's nothing in the physical therapy world that teaches them that mindset. That is considered kind of taboo in some areas. Like, oh, you don't need mental health. But it's not really mental health. It's like you got to give them this person the confidence back, which is the other benefit of filming for her and showing her, hey, that knee wobbled like hell in week 1. It's not wobbling as much in these exercises. I want you to continue to do these and see if you can double and triple them up while you're not with me in the gym. That way we can do more dynamic work and get into the plyometrics and get into the hops and bounding and the locomotives that have not been introduced yet to y'all through this, but we're getting there. Because you understand spine, shoulder. Does everybody have a pretty good understanding of the hip and the pelvis? And now our questions are really headed towards foot, ankle, shin, knee.
Yes.
Would you tell me no if you didn't?
Yeah. Yeah, of course.
All right. Check this out. So the bear, see the outside toe? I'm going to do a yellow. The outside toe, okay? The shin and the thigh of that leg are pointing outwards. That shape is why we're calling it the bow, because it looks like a bow. There's also a bow to the outside of any energy system, right? Let me do this. This is where this gets very cool, and I'm excited because you could look at this hurricane, and I could literally describe it as any joint in the body of how things load and release. If we look at a bow shape, okay, there's a loading that comes this way, and then there's a releasing that comes the other way. Does this make sense?
Can you explain that, like when you're walking?
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
So you've got that, right? And then you've got this is the release wave, okay? And then you've got the load. Back to the
So it's the
inside.
opposite.
There's a reciprocation in energy, any energy system. The release is the back heel. Okay, that's the release, the back heel. That's shin and thigh pointing in. Right here, here's another one. So you got this pattern, right? See that one? And then you've got this pattern. Goes the other way.
Maybe they don't see the red. Maybe they don't see, I see it, but I don't see, I don't know if they see the red.
I see it. Yeah, I can see the thin line.
Should do
Yeah.
green, boom, 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 and then you've got blue from the center the other way.
And this is physics, right? Like all energy moves through a pivot point, really. Yeah.
Yep. So there's a center piece right here, right? That tightly wound center piece. That's the hip socket to me. So the pelvis turns around that hip socket, as does the hip socket turns on the inside of that pelvis. But that point right there is where it's tightly wound, which is where all of the power is created. When it comes to this storm, you see how this in the middle is more tightly wound and this out here is more loose?
Yeah.
Where do you think the heaviest winds are?
In the center? Oh.
Right near the center, right? So you're creating these tight turns in these exercises. You want these little bitty movements to become really powerful over time. Versus if you start really wobbling around and creating more motion, you're not necessarily creating more power. Retie. So same thing. Any energy system. Hip. That's why you've got the internal rotators and the external rotators, both in the forearm, the bicep. the flexion, the grip versus the release. You look at the knee, you're going to see these same shapes, these striations in the tissues. Okay, release wave. That's what happens when the knee comes in, the shin comes in. The energy is moving away from the body at that point. That calf and that back heel are going to turn away from the body. That should happen naturally based off of the pelvis that turns and the head and the chest that turns, right? Because then we've got the psoas and these all right here that are pulling this way as things turn around the pelvis. Undo all that. That might have been a little fast. As the pelvis turns into the right column, shin, thigh, chest, everything loads into what? Into that right side. And if I can get that hip to go back, you see these tissues? Where do they connect? Right there. It would be helpful to just go to my app. Here, let's look. I mean, the ACL is not a muscle, right? Everybody knows that.
Yep.
It's a little bitty point, okay? And if this gets torqued, I want you to see this. See this? Wraps under, and this wraps across. You ever had a rope and like twisted the? Has anybody rolled up a cigar, rolled up a doobie? You twist the ends, right? Opposite directions, and that creates tension. Good thing we're not in university. I would have just got fired.
Yes, but I guess we'll have.
But everybody knows what that is, right? You can visualize that. If not, like I can use a different, but you twist one end and you twist the other end the other way. That's what creates tension and elasticity. Now, if you twist it the other way, right, which is what happens, visualize this. If you twist it the other way, it loosens it. And now you've got slack in a system. And when you ever flown a kite and you let go of the kite without having control of the kite? And what happens when you lose all of your rope and now the kite is doing 30 miles an hour up in the sky and you've got a little string? It's just going to what to that string?
Oh, it's going to, yeah.
It's going to snap it. And that's what happens when the ACL tears to me. It goes from a slack to a pow to a tensioning moment, and it just snaps because it can't handle. Ooh. Okay, it can't handle that tear. If my knee, if my thigh and shin drop to the inside, okay, we'll call it closing the hip, just from the hip up, okay, just from there up, if that closes, and then this foot gets stuck and this shin gets stuck over here, what gets torn? The weakest link. which is that little bitty guy right there. It's an inefficient pattern, and it's based off of this foot. See all those ligaments? Tiny ligaments, teeny tiny. A lot of them are in the foot, but in the ankle, who's had a sprained ankle? Inside or outside, okay? If you have a sprained ankle, your foot, your landing gear, your suspension system is already at risk. And then if this foot collapses, the shin collapses or falls open, depending on what happens in that moment, and the opposite happens up above, that's what over time repetitively stresses that ACL. So you're trying to regain control in these, which is that internal shin tracer I introduced today. Those also, as well as where do those attach? Behind the leg. So if you really get into that hip deep, you're securing you're securing that knee to the hip by way of long head of the hamstring, right? They all attach right there at the base of the pelvis. So this is the powerhouse. So we want to isolate it, which means take the foot out of the equation. Put somebody on their kneecap. And before you introduce the foot standing work, make sure that they can do it in half kneeling. Make sure they can coordinate the pelvis turning from make sure the pelvis can turn and release, which means, here, let me use a different color. Turn and release. So on the release, on one side, it loads here, the back heel moves away, this elbow moves away, the chest heads that way, and it loads this column, versus the red loads here, boom, 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 boom.
And that's
and then you're
the
loading.
hurricane.
You're loading into that. So
and that's the hurricane.
that is what you're looking at from the top now of how that energy system moves. So if you can see that, you know, okay, I see the tweak, I see the problem in the squat, I see where someone falls into one column or the other, and now your mind is working in a way, what's the fix? How do I reintroduce the problematic pattern? Or how do I reintroduce the answer? Because the brain is going to like the answer. It's going to pick up on it. It's going to go, wow, I'm not under control there. Is this a good, I'm going to save it. Let's throw it in here just for reference. You see why I've taught upper body first, everybody? Because if we introduce the foot and you don't know what's going on up here, then you're going to get confused with the head and the chest going the wrong direction and loading the wrong column. And you create a whole bunch of problems right up in this area. It's already gunked up from everybody sitting on their butt. So little bitty movements of the pelvis directly affect that knee. That is why I've been not in a hurry to get down to this area. Because if you look at that knee, you go, okay, what's going on here? All of this is strictly stability. It's just so the lower leg doesn't go flying off the rest of the structure. Because when we die, you guys ever found a dead animal? You can pick up that piece and you can pick up that piece, and they are no longer attached because this connective tissue dehydrates and basically turns into dirt. So on that note, if I don't use these ligaments inside of their design, these ligaments directly attach to what? Other tissues up above, some of them. Talk about that patella. See that little design? Sweet. It matches. You got these bursas, these little fluid sacs, okay? Think of it like, to me, that's like the oil can, but it's also a protective layer. If you put somebody down on their kneecap, you directly target the hip. When you reintroduce the foot, there's another bursa, another little oil sac. Okay? So when you reintroduce the outside of the foot, the strong side, you're securing the knee to the outside, the loading side, right? A lot of people try to point the kneecap to the left, but it's really about loading this and synchronizing it with that. For those 2 points to get synced up so you don't have a problem in here where the fibula. Who's got somebody or personally got pain in that area of the knee, outside of the knee? Anybody?
Nope.
I've had it, but little for like a week.
So overbowing, right? Too much pressure into that area. Getting way on the outside of the foot and really, really overloading that socket right there. So this is where, if you do have somebody with pain here, get them out of it, which means we're going to load that pelvis to what side?
To the right.
And go away from it. A lot of people try to chase symptoms. Hey, my left knee hurts. I need to do more left exercises. No. Get out of it. Give it a rest. Your body's talking to you. ACL is torn. Leave it alone. Strengthen the other side. Because at the end of the day, that's what probably failed you. And then the other side wore out. So when you're looking at injuries, and that's, let me be clear, that is not the only way to do this. Okay? There's not one right answer when it comes to rehab, but there is a design of the body, which is what I'm hoping that you are all getting a way big head start on your peers. You're going to be able to look and go, okay, look at that forearm. Let's study it. What do we notice? Looks complicated. Now let's look at it for the shape that it is. There's a shape, there's a shape, there's a shape, okay? What's the other side do? Shoot, look at that. We got this shape. There's a shape, there's a shape, right? And then you got this shape. Use a different color. Strong side, skill side. Extensors. This hand and the foot are largely similar. The only difference is that this hand is made to swing, grab things. But if you look at the structure of him, very similar. Very similar. Let's look at this. There's that palmar fascia. Okay. Same stuff, different joint, same design, and they reciprocate one another. This hand, when it grabs, right there, that's your grasp, that's your front chain, that's your deadlift, that's your wrestling, that's your grab it from your brother and take it, okay? Versus your running and your locomotive points is this side connects to that side. And they look very similar, yes? Those two tissues where you study it, you look at it and go, wow, okay, I see the reciprocation here. I see how those are related. The striations here, the striations here, and the striations here, those lines. And okay, well, there must be some sort of a pattern here. Where does it keep going? Let's look. Boom. All right, look at those lines. Okay, so front of my knee, if I take my hip back, this gets longer. I add more tension, more pull, which means I also need to load this and load this to secure this. And my golly, that's the powerhouse. Everything starts right there. I can chop your foot off, and you can still run with a what? Prosthesis. Give you a new foot. I can chop you off from the knee down, and what can you still do? You can still run. I can chop you off from the hip. What are you still going to be able to do? You can still run. Why? Because that pelvis and that spine are what create movement. You just have to be able to control that upper body and synchronize the lower half with the upper half for fluidity. So you quite literally float, right? Gravity's pulling us down, upper body, butt. Take the butt back. Where does the chest go?
Forward.
Take the butt forward. Where does the chest go?
Back.
And kind of down, right? Get shorter. Taller, shorter, taller, shorter. So another good little drill, rather than going, hey, like you can overcomplicate this with a client, right? You get into all of this that I'm getting into with you. I want you all to understand this in depth and be able to apply it. Where somebody walks in the door and they go, hey, the doctor doesn't know what's wrong. Say, cool, let me grab my phone. What are you going to do? Google it? No, I'm going to film you. And I'm going to look at it. And I'm going to study it. I'm going to look at it with you. And I'm going to ask you what you see. And I'm going to make sure that we're all on the same page. And we're going to see if we can figure out what the doctor didn't look at, which is there's a shape of the body. They'll use x-rays and MRIs. JP, you guys just got, like, it was hugely beneficial for me to be able to see the MRIs. Because
Right
I can
now,
see the
I have to hang up, but it would be nice they see it.
Can I share it?
Yes.
Find it.
So I'm gonna go and meet her right now. Okay, Lucia.
Will you ring me back in when
Yes.
you guys hit a point where you need me? I will look at your MRIs in the future with them. I'm not going to jump into the neck
Okay.
and leave this area.
Okay.
I'm going to go back to the bow, okay? Crooked foot, right? Foot out. Where's the shin and the thigh? Out. Where's the pressure? Is it the front foot or is the back foot?
Back.
The back. And look at that shape on the back foot. Guess what it is? Shoot, that's a pretty good bow, right? So the bow happens on both sides. Just a matter of where, like you see this picture and you know where's the movement going. movement's going this way, which means shins, thighs, shins, thighs. This is all gonna close powerfully. Boom, bow. Shin, thigh out. Landing column, backside, releasing column. Heel away, elbow away, chest, head, shin, thigh. All of that energy is moving into this front column. From a top view, chest and thigh synchronized. The pelvis is doing the power moving. The foot lands and leaves the ground. The foot lands to what? Leave. Okay, don't get hung up in like, oh, I'm gonna strengthen that bow to the point that they can't get out of it. You still want to reciprocate it. Bow, 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 bow. So that's the shape you want to see if you're loading that column. The backside, what's the shape? The release shape. So with this picture, you do that on the wall. What hip is loaded here? The blue one or the green one?
The blue one.
And give me one clue why.
He's shifting his chest to that column.
Good. What's another cue? Somebody else.
He's doing the bow.
So you see it, right? You can now identify it and see it structurally. So when you film somebody or you're teaching an exercise, if they're having a lot of trouble getting into that shape, standing up, what can you do to make it easier? We can use what? We can use boards. We can change the environment. That's one way. We adapt the environment. We give them a sloped board. Now we don't have to teach the foot as much because it opens the foot. And then all we got to do is load pressure, head control into the column, chest to the outside into the column. Or we do it where? On the ground.
On the floor.
Yep. So you give them their pivot points back. Here's which side's loaded. Ooh, trick question.
Backside. Oh, side.
Here, I'm going to label this.
He's going to load
okay?
the left side.
The right. Yeah. The
One,
right.
two.
Mhm. One.
How come?
Because you're releasing from the other side. And you have your bow there.
The bow on both sides.
Yeah, you have the bow on both sides actually.
Which one is most likely landing next?
Oh, next.
One.
Where is the head? Over which foot?
Two.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Boom. Okay, so in an instance, see, this is why the bow is on both sides, right? We know that now.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, shoot, there's a release and a
Mm-hmm.
load.
Mm-hmm.
So our clue for that assessment is the head. Still frame, difficult, okay? But still frame is a lot of what you're going to be able to find. Let's watch a baseball swing. Loading, which side?
Loading on his r- his
right, left,
right side.
right. Okay, so it reciprocates. The bat swinging back tells me the energy is moving right now. Where? Up, up and around the pelvis, up and around the pelvis, up and around the pelvis. So in this moment, all of this pressure, to me, when I look at this, it's in that hip.
Yeah, yeah.
And you're going to see this, okay? Now, he's not moving towards us, right? He's not running towards us. He's actually going to take energy that way. So this is where it becomes a lateral movement. And in this moment right here, where's the pressure?
To the other side. The
Yep,
opposite side.
yep. And
He's
then,
back to it.
so this is where a swing
Mm-hmm.
can look really funny. So now look at this moment right there. That's a bad shape, right? I would call that a bad
Mm-hmm.
shape if he was moving towards us, but he's not moving
Mm-hmm.
towards us. So this is where you can't just go, ooh, there's the shape. That's an ACL tear. That's an ACL tear. That's not an ACL tear. Want to know why? Where's the pressure?
Mm-hmm.
He's already releasing it from that side. It's basically just back there like a kickstand in this moment. Look where the head and the chest are. Head and chest, released. All he's doing is keeping pressure back there. The hands are back. Now this hip, what was this shape, let me go back, draw it. In the baseball, ooh, I didn't know I could do that. That's dope.
Yeah, that's how
I'm going to have to play with that because that means I can still frame this and make it a sequence. So there's a collapse in the foot, right? This is where there's a misconception here. A lot of people go, ACL tear, Achilles tear, collapsed foot. Not so fast. Where's the pressure? What's the powerhouse of the body? Okay, so this rotation loads and then releases to this front side. That's where the pressure's going. Everything's headed that way. So don't get lost in just the pictures without thinking, okay, where's the energy going? Because now watch this pelvis come all the way around, right foot, right foot, right foot, right foot, front foot, right foot, boom, okay? And then where's the pressure? Once it comes all the way around, it ends up back in the everybody see that? Am I confusing anyone? Or is anybody like, got it, moving on? But there's a bow here, loaded structure. That's where watching the film over and over and over again and rewinding it and going back and forth and going, okay, what's actually happening? Where's the pressure? Pressure's in the right side, 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 left 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 side. How do I know? Chest, right side, right side, right side, right side, boom. And then I see that pelvis keep going. I know that the energy has to stop up there at some point. It just keeps going around and winds and winds and winds. So that shape right there, how many of you can do that statically? Step across the right foot and turn back and look at that back side, okay? You feel where the decompression of the spine has to happen first? Because if you're compressed in the spine, you're never going to get to that slot. The pelvis is going to turn, the spine gets locked up, All right. And when that spine gets locked up and the pelvis turns, you're either going to hurt your lumbar spine or it's going to send an energy wave down and blow up the lower half. So you've got to get this upper body synchronized. You've got to learn that shape, and then how to get in and out of it is what you're teaching people. And they don't even need to know why, honestly, unless they ask. If they have questions, if they're wanting to learn more, great. Otherwise, where are you putting them? Head, chest, in the what column? 2 words I use. The head and the chest go into the head, chest go into the, come on, Gabby, come on, Henry. Jan ditched us.
I'm trying to remember.
Ask questions. Don't guess. If you don't know, just say, Cody, I don't
Into
know.
the rib,
What was your question?
into the rib cage.
The head and the chest go into the what column? The head and the chest, they go into the what column?
The pressure column.
The pressured column. That's a good word for it. 2 other words I use. They both start with the same letter. Landing and loaded column. So landed, loaded column is the head and the chest. Sometimes it'll be out of that column. Things like playing tennis. There's a moment where the head and the chest, there's a loaded column, loaded column, loaded column, loaded column. Head and the chest are headed this way. I'm still keeping my load in this loaded column. There's pressure down on the front side. I don't want to go sway way over here too early. I want it all to turn, load, leave, keeping the hands, the head back, the head, the pelvis. The pelvis is now releasing. Boom. That energy is here, and I'm transferring it up and releasing it through an object. Boom. Golf. Boom. I'm releasing it towards an object, and now I have a release wave and a loaded wave, and the pelvis will tell me that story. Now, if I have a crooked foot and I don't quite all the way get to it, let me show you the side view. If I'm here and I stay out of it and then I land here, that's trouble. Why? Because I never what? Opened that sucker up.
No, yeah.
Boom. So that's where the opening of the hip versus the closing of the hip. When I teach a baseball player, I want them to understand hips can close, hips can open, okay? But nothing in baseball is 2 pivot points at the same time. It's always one or the other, okay? So I want to make sure that they can load into a hip, load their butt back and down into a hip, hip and pelvis, chest tall, head over that landing column, load the hands, make sure the shoulders can load, and then I'm going to step, or I'm going to just really show the heel to the pitcher, okay? What does that do to this front side? What is this hip behavior?
Closing.
Yes, great work. Great work. Great work. Gabby, Henry, JP, like, understanding this terminology doesn't mean that you have to just use this terminology. What I want you to do is, I just want to make sure you understand what I see when it comes to the behavior of the body and the movement, the crawling, the baby, the heel that drags away, okay? So this is a drill. Why? Because it's a movement skill. You've got skills, okay? And then you got patterns. I'm going to film you. How often do I see it release? How often does it synchronize with the upper half? Does it release when we want it to? Or are you trying to close it too early? Are you trying to cheat it? I don't want people to think, oh man, Cody's looking to see if I'm releasing the heel away. Because I've had them, they'll walk around like this. That's not right. Should be calm, collected. You should be able to go from column to column, column to column, column to column, column to column. Okay, can you split the stance? Column to column, column to column. Can you do it on the ground? Column to column. Okay, ACL, this one, unweighted. Okay, put it up on a little brick, put it on a yoga block. And now when you load it, it's an elevated surface, which means I'm going to get to it earlier and load that hip. I put it up on something. Just like if I elevate the backside, there's ways to create these patterns. You just have to be able to go, okay, where's the energy going? What am I working on with this exercise? What am I actually doing to the nervous system? Because there's exercise and fitness, which is kind of this do whatever you want world. And then there's what I'm teaching all of you to do, which is help someone get their behaviors and their instinctive and innate skills back, because our modern environment takes them from us. Flat ground, not natural. What's it do to my body? Screws it up. Can I get away from it? Probably not. What do I have to do about that? Decompress, mindful movement practices, wall sits. I've got to film myself and go, man, film myself squatting. What's going on in the downstairs? What can I fix? What do I know about columns? Well, shoulder, hip, that foot, all you do is bring it back in the column. If it's still a little crooked, whatever. Shoulder, hip, bring it back into the column. If it's a little crooked, whatever. Now, when I get up into the tippy toes and lift the heels off the ground, oh, what's going to happen? It's going to start to load it more naturally. So I'm just going to start to control these squats. Nice and easy. Little bitty movements. It's not about range of motion and depth as much as, hey, can I do 80 of these without my heel touching on the ground? What's that going to do? It's going to light up my tushy, which is exercise. You find out what people want when they come to you. What are they interested in? It's a baseball player. They're probably interested in how fast the ball leaves the bat. Okay? They really don't care about many other things. Why? Because the scouts have a piece of paper and a radar gun. And when you hit the ball, if it says 95 off the bat, your name gets put in a pile with everybody else's. If it says 120, your name gets put in a pile all on its own. A picture is taken of it and it's sent to someone. Why? Because 130 is elite. 95, sure, it's fast, but everybody can do that. How can I get someone to 130? We're going to have to do a lot more than wall sits, first and foremost. I'm not saying that you're going to be able to go take a baseball player to the next level, but if I can take the kid that's 95 and I can video him and I can see that he walks around like this, what do I know? This kid can't get into what column? So he's just stuck back here and he's hitting 95 off of a back column, which is great because I'm like, oh, a lot of these kids can't get to their back column. They rush into the front side. They chop down on the ball. I need to get them to tilt, turn, boom, get him here. He's got the first skill. We're not going to work on that. What am I going to work on? Take a wild guess.
Like you say, the head and the chest, moving columns.
Moving into the other column. So
rotation.
If he does a really good job of loading into one column, what do I want him to get better at? Transferring energy. Mm-hmm. Yes. Great term for that, Henry. That's probably a more accepted term too in the exercise world. We're transferring energy to the ball, right? What's really happening though? Oh shoot, I got to slow it down. If I watch a kid full speed swing, I'm like, I don't actually know what happened there. I'm not going to lie to the kid. It looks sloppy, but I don't actually know. What do you mean, coach? Bro, you got to come see me for an hour. We got to study this. There's a lot of film study that goes down. And without that film study, you don't actually know what's going on. You can have a hunch, okay? You can have a hunch. You can guess. There's an educated guess. You're going to be some of the best educated guessers there are at this point because you're going to see shapes and patterns. But when it comes down to it, what do we have to do? We got to film. We got to study it. Which brings me, Gabby, we brought it up once before, an iPad of any kind, iPad Air, iPad Basic.
Yeah.
Doesn't have to be. I use the iPad Pro because I need the memory and I need to be able to, like when I film for y'all, I have to be able to do all that film work, and that takes up like a faster processor. When it comes to just basic film, this is the homework I was going to give you all. If you have access to one, I was going to give you a video and have you talk about it and just voice it over and mark it up. Super simple, can be anything. It's not going to, it can be movement based, and that's what I prefer. But if you want to film a tree and say, this is a tree, it's green, it's got bark, and circle the bark and circle the green when you talk about it, that's what I'm looking for. We're going to start to work into that skill set of being able to assess, because you're going to have to be able to not just see it, but communicate it with someone. Which I hope I'm setting a good example of, kind of slowly feeding you all seeing it and feeling it. I've given you exercises to begin with because I want you to know all the exercises I've given you so far is really what you want to increase the volume of with the majority of people. You need to be able to see that they can do it well and often, and then you've got to create some sort of a checklist for them, like I've done for y'all. Just basic, like, hey, do this 3 times in a day. And then if you don't have progress in 2 weeks, well, shoot, I need to see if you're doing those or not. I need you to show back up with that checklist. All of you have said you're feeling better, you're getting a better understanding. So I don't have a need to like supervise you with those checklists yet. I say yet because I don't know. Foot in the ankle series, that's going to be a riot, man. This is going to be fun. I need to go through 5 exercises. You know what? We're going to have her at 4:30, aren't we?
Yes.
Well, JP said he's already with the client, but he was online, and now I'm just sending someone to ask him if he's gonna get online again, so you can help him assess her. But
If
just give me 2 minutes.
cool, no worries. If he's not able to come back, what I'll probably do, honestly, guys, is I'll film these exercises like I've been, and I'll give them to you in that rather than introduce. I've introduced a ton this week. Henry, how's your knee, bro?
It's getting a little better. I was talking before, but nobody listens. But it was the microphone. I was with another AirPods, and now I'm switched to the phone. But the part that I have a little bit of confusion is how much pressure do I have to put in my foot when we load? When we load, I'm always having that knee pain, and I don't know how much pressure I'm putting into the foot, because sometimes I'm getting sore the next day of running, of doing anything in the foot that doesn't have the surgery.
Good news, one, that the other foot is the one getting sore. That means that it was the one that needed help, which kind of goes towards my hunch always with somebody is look at the other side. If there's an injury, look at the other side and like fatigue that. When you talk about soreness, does it go away within a day? Are you able to use some of these decompression techniques? The supine shin tracer
is really strange. It's really strange, but every time I'm sitting down, and when I get up, I feel that pain, and then it goes away, and then comes again, and it goes away, and like that.
So I would call that intermittent pain.
Yeah.
Something, let's say, Henry, let's say you and I were working together and you were like, man, you just tell me exactly what you did. And like, all right. And you go, I don't know if I'm getting better, Cody. What I'm going to implement is a pain journal first and say, show me how often it hurts. Just hit the box. It's 3 p.m. Boom. Pain, right knee. Shoot, 4 p.m. Pain, right knee. And then we're going to look in a week and see if it's less often, because I need to be able to show you, hey, it's getting better. You've already verbalized to me that you feel like it's getting better, which means we're just going to continue to refine what we're doing with you. The supine stork that shin tracer, this work on your back, and then locking in and extending right there is going to be one of the best possible things you can do for the back of that knee, because it lengthens all those tissues. And then on the way back down, nice and slow. Remember to isolate and press that hand into the inside of that knee, and then work in the ankle gyroscopes. Now I'm working an ankle, pulling pressure down and away. And by pressing my hand and pressing my knee into my hand, I'm working the hip. So I'm getting that pressure to get out of that knee, which is what we need. When it comes to the foot, the sore foot, you talked about a foot being sore. I'm going to hop up here. You can see me.
I'm talking about how much pressure I can put to the foot that has the pressure. How much pressure do the foot have? Because I don't know if I raising my tail by, how do you say, talon too much. If I'm with my front foot too much, I don't know how much that I have to lift my back foot.
So on a scale of 1 to 100%, what percent are you loading?
I'm trying to load like the whole body percent of the part of my body. I mean, like the 70% of my
70
body.
is a good number. I'm an 80% guy. I want like 80% load. I want you to be able to. What exercises are you doing for it?
The ones that I like is the one that take off the pressure when you load the left one and use like you put your feet.
When you load your opposite knee.
I mean, I did that one, and the one that you just told me that right now, I did that with John Paul once, and it feels good, and I didn't remember it until now. I'm gonna do it maybe later and tomorrow.
That's what I want to know, if you've been doing those or not, because that is one of the first things I give somebody with a knee is the supine shin tracer, because it's a open chain. Okay, left side open chain, meaning there's no pressure in the foot, so there's no compression. It's all coordinated movement. It's all playful movement. The next thing I would do with you is say, okay, let's elevate that front foot and see if we can turn and calf raise in it. Okay, I'm going to show you elevate that front foot, turn, and calf raise, right? Now I'm loading that knee, but if I need to put pressure away from it, I can go put pressure in that backside. If I can lean into it and load, I'm putting more weight into it. I'm going to get way more of the hip. And there's this happy spot. Okay, if I'm away from it and loading it, lazy calf raises, I'm not going to get much out of that. But if I get the body pressure into it and load it, I'm going to get way more out of that. I can do that by elevating the front side, or I can get down and just work on the calf raise, work on the pelvis turn. Okay, that pelvis turns, the hip goes back, the chest comes forward, 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 forward. Find that spot where you feel like that hip is engaged, and then hit the calf raise. Okay, whoo, you fall into the other column, guess what? Good. Just reset. Those are reaction responses. If you get that, oh man, I'm losing my balance feeling, good. Those are reaction responses. That's what we get. Those are what re-ingrain the nervous system to hit this synchronized movement again. It doesn't hit it anymore. And when you get back into it, you're like, whoa, I'm weak there. So the body's just been avoiding it and using some other system that's suboptimal, because we run around in this world that doesn't really challenge the human body the way it's designed. So you're seeking that reaction response. You're looking for how much percent can I load and get that neurological feedback, and then how long can I spend there, and then can I add a foot pressure, can I add a shoulder routine to it and hold it. You go away to a different joint and add a skill, right? When I talk about a skill, can I pick up a pencil? That's a skill. Can I throw a baseball? That's a skill. Can I throw a baseball and hit a bucket? That's a different kind of skill. Can I do it 10 times in a row? That's a performance pattern. And you're trying to build up those 10 successful reps in a row. You're getting to that point. You're probably going to have 4 to 6 in an area like, cool. If I'm in an exercise and I can do 4 to 6 good reps out of 10, that's a good sign. that means that I'm in a good exercise that's going to challenge me appropriately. If I'm doing something that I can do 1,000 of them and doesn't challenge me, I need to upgrade that. How can I upgrade it? I can remove a pivot point. I can add pressure, like an extra, the medicine ball walk for you. That'd be good for you, Henry. Taking that ball and learning to just, can I take the ball from column to column? Okay, now can I do it in a circle, right? Now can I do it at a higher pace? Those are all ways to increase the volume or increase the duration or increase the challenge. And that's, you've got to find the 3 exercises that get you to feel better. Supine, storks, kneeling, calf raises, and then pick one. I'm going to tell you wall work, but I want you to pick something. Get good at those 3 things and do it 3 times a day for 30 reps. If that's helpful, stick with that as a routine and try to avoid other stressors at the beginning until you can go, hey, I'm feeling 80%, man. Like I'm feeling 90%. Sweet. Now let's start to add things in, but don't lose those 3 that you know are helpful, because those are the 3 that are going to help you recover from whatever things you're also going to do. I know that you roll your jiu-jitsu, not the best thing for your knee, right? Somebody get a hold of it and turns it inward while they take the foot out. That's going to stress the knee. What do you have to do when you're done, or what do you have to do before those classes? You got to do the supine stork work before and after. You got to do the prevention work, and you got to do the recovery work. And what happens is those joints become more malleable. Yours is already stretched out from an injury, and now you got a surgery as well. So you've got new parts. Those new parts are stronger than the old parts a lot of times. So silver linings, right? But we got to reduce pain. Pain is where at on the knee. Look at that area, study it in the anatomy, and go, okay, this is the spot that I need to get pressure out of, right? Or I need it to work less. It's overworked. It's too tight. It's too stressed. It's overworked. Thinking of it like that, and you go, okay, how can I get out of that side? Because you're worried, I'm worried about a knee, and we don't ever do anything out of that knee, then we're going to continue to impact that knee in a negative way. So be willing to go, I'm going to go work on the other side and see if I suck at that side too, because I might. And if I do, then I'm going to get better at that side. And wow, now the other side gets a little help from its friends. Cool? You guys rock.
Cool. Very cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
Your homework is catch up. I was going to tell you I'll do that for the hour that I was gone, is just go back through, watch the videos, and then hit some questions in the discussion. Write to me so I know what I need to cover, where you guys are at from a comprehensive standpoint. Because the foot and the ankle and the knee for the next 2 weeks that I'm going to do, I'm throwing it all out there together. I'm going to make sure that I develop all these exercises. I've already written them down. These are the things that I want you to know. That's how I'm going to present it. But we're going to be doing the assessment tools. And I want you to, like, at the end of this, you're not going to be like, sweet, I know how to do it. Remember I told you, like, I'm going to test your comprehension over time. There's no guarantee of a certification yet, but I want this to be something that you all 180% understand inside and out before I go, you understand it. Because when I give you something that says you understand it and I sign on it, that means that I'm signing for all those other people that come to you that you can do a damn good job. And that is my intention. So when I throttled this slowly for that reason, because I don't want to go, here it all is, watch it and get back to me. Because I've done that in the past, and 3 out of 10 coaches turn out to be good coaches. And I've got 3 of y'all, and I want 3 out of 3. And then we'll expand this thing. Okay, I've kind of cocooned myself over the last 2 years. I stopped teaching the way I was teaching, to really go back and watch and see, hey, what are all these people doing now that I've spent time with? And a lot of them, some of them are doing good things. Others are like, I don't like the direction you took that. Like, what did I not cover? What did I miss? Why is there a misconception there? That's on me as a teacher. And that's why I say, give me feedback in the discussion. Write to me, say, Cody, my knee feels better, or Cody, today's a shitty day for my back, or a shitty day for my knee, or I tweaked it. Like, if you can communicate with me in those moments, if I've got 10, 15 minutes and I see y'all are writing to me, then I'm gonna send more input. Otherwise, I'm gonna think, hey, you have plenty to work on. You're overwhelmed. There's too much to do. I'm not adding anything else right now. And that's where my mindset is. That doesn't mean I'm not gonna give it to you. It just means I'm slowly
Yeah,
dropping it
slowly.
so you're not overwhelmed with all of this.
Okay,
Because
and
in the
even if you
past,
have
I've overwhelmed
questions,
people.
even
Yeah,
if
it
you
just
have
like
questions.
film
Oh,
yourself
yeah.
doing your exercise, Henry, and throw that in the chat. Throw that in a channel.
Okay.
Say, hey, Cody, this is what I did today. And I might say, looks great, bro. I might say, hey, add this. I might say, hey, here's something I noticed. I want you to pay attention to that next time you do it. I'm going to be working with you. The more you give me, the more I can give feedback on. And that's where we're at
Perfect.
at this point with this class. It's like, I really need more and more and more feedback from y'all to understand and gauge where you're at from a comprehensive standpoint. So I don't have to make a multiple choice test and give it to y'all, because a multiple choice test really doesn't give me. The only reason I do those is so the certification is legitimate, because there has to be an exam, right? You have to pass a test. But right now, I'm making sure you are intellectually understanding this at a deep level. And that's where the movement, the shapes, the behaviors, those little things that I use, those visuals, they look crazy, right? The drawings I do, I'm like, that's a bad drawing. I hope you understand that. But if you really start to look at things, you'll notice it everywhere. You'll notice it in little things, little plants. You'll notice it in anything that's not man-made. Just anything natural. Like, shoot, there it is. Go to the ocean, right? And look at the sand, and you'll see these waves that get created in the sand as the water recedes, as the tide goes out. And if you dig a little bit, you might find a seashell. And if you look at the side, like, shoot, there it is again. It's on so many levels, but it's in the body as well. It's in the body in the hip, and it's in the body as a whole. The body moves inside of it. It's not just contained in the body. Like the wave, the pressure, just like that storm, right? If I throw a baseball or I swing a racket, the energy leaves the body and it heads that way. But it also, with gravity, it's going to curve. It's going to land. It's going to die there. Energy just, it's all around us all the time. I sound like a crazy person.
No, you don't. Totally makes sense. And thank you. I'm gonna send you the
Yeah.
videos, and I'm gonna be in touch.
You guys are doing
Yeah.
awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you, Cody.
Thank you. Great class as always.
Sweet, guys.
Very.
Awesome. And I don't have baseball tonight, so I'm gonna go keep working. I'll be dropping some film to y'all late this evening or tomorrow morning.
Sure.
Because
Okay, thank you,
I filmed
Cody.
last week. I filmed the exercises, but I didn't have good audio, so I just threw it to the side, and then I've been moving into a. I've been not even moving myself, moving other people. That's it.
Okay.
Class over.
Thank you.
Adios.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Cody.